Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Deciphering My Experience. My name is Eric, and we are joined today by Greg. He is a fellow New Yorker who's still over there on the East Coast. And Greg recently reached out to me, I guess, after seeing some of my recent videos and wanted to make contact. He himself having some experiences in the past and also an advocate in the TI movement. We have Greg here today to share what he's up to, his experiences, and let us know what he has planned for in the future. Welcome to the show today, Greg.
Thank you, Eric, for having me.
No problem. Thanks for coming. I guess first and foremost, let's say what would you say was the link or the connection that made you reach out in my direction, Greg?
Well, I've always been a supporter of the super soldier movement in disclosing their experiences. And so I've been following many of the channels on the topic. And Penny Bradley is one of them. And I saw an interview with her and you, and I thought it was I was just personally amazed by it. And then I also saw another video with you at a conference. I apologize for not remembering the name, but you guys held a great live conference, and it was interactive with the audience. And at that particular time, I was in the process of just gathering research on where these mind control hacking labs could be. I had an interview with Jessica Ariel, and she's in the know as well as to, how they carve up this thing and the locations and things like that. So she explained to me that I'm on the East Coast and Montauk is, pretty much like headquarters. So I took her word for it. And then I heard what you had to say, and it just, it clicked. In fact, the information that you shared was so in depth, and I just knew you knew more. I mean, you were speaking at a conference and you're addressing them and you're giving them these details. And I said, he knows a lot more because, they just, you were filling in the gaps. But here I am listening to this, and I have all these things that I'm processing in my mind that I have to do regarding my cause. And I just felt like I connected with the perfect person in the know. And I just said, I got to reach out to this guy and talk with him and get him to share his knowledge with the TI community, who is looking for, basically we're all just looking for help and answers and an end to, the attacks. I mean, that is the gist of, what we're going through. But at the same time, there's an education movement to try and learn, because if you want to try and beat your enemy, learn as much as you can. And their weapon is remote, so they attack and they hide, but they're on Earth.
Excuse me, I think there was something that Sun Tzu said about that, about knowing your enemy is the way to
the
victory.
art of war.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And so I just said, well, we know they're here, but where are they? And so that just led me down a rabbit hole to, Long Island. And, I'm a New Yorker, you're a New Yorker, and I support your cause as well. And I heard what your experiences are. And so it's just, like I said in previous conversations, there's a link. We're all in the same ship. And even though the directions have been, splintered, but we all definitely fighting the same enemy. That's for sure.
For sure. I agree with that 100%. It's like we're all coming from different perspectives and just trying to find the same vocabulary.
Yeah, exactly. This enemy we're dealing with, it's got its hand in every pot, literally, and it's doing very well with it, unfortunately. So, I just have a philosophy, network, we're all in the same fight, and do your best. I don't want to ever say that, my cause is going to be the one to end this. That's insane. But, you get nowhere sitting on your ass. That's for sure. And waving a flag and yay. We're talking action here. Like, are you making the phone calls following up on, the responses. Are the people you networking, to get some action? Are they doing, movement? That's what I want.
This
Movement.
makes me think of
Not
it makes me think of like, more ancient times in battlefields and stuff when there's like,
right.
this huge invading foreign force, but then like local clans have to get together and be like, listen, we don't all necessarily get along all the time, but right now,
Right. Exactly.
right now, it's get a long time. See what's coming over the horizon? It's time to get along.
Exactly.
Yep.
Come together for this cause, please. But then we can go back to fighting later if that's okay
Yep.
with you, because this guy is going to wipe us both out, kind of thing.
That's what I see a lot of in I guess you would say like in the disclosure communities, truther communities. There's a lot of infighting and bickering right now as to what's the biggest issue and what's the biggest secret and what do we need. And it's like, listen, hold on, we have a common enemy that's lying to all of us and screwing all of us over constantly. Let's work together, find out who this common foe is, and mitigate the problem.
Yeah, and you find that with a lot of these, various groups that are, involved with some sort of conflict with the government in some kind of way, whether it's, some kind of technology assault or whether it was some kind of program that's been done to them, and there's a clandestine underground program that's been going on for years, much like the Super Soldier project. And
let me ask you again, Greg, how long would you say that you've been involved or interested, even so to say, or been on your radar, the topic of the TIs, the targeted individuals?
The moment, let's see, I became aware in, I would say 2012, because I back then I was listening to a radio show called The Kevin Smith Show, and he had interviewed Dr. Robert Duncan.
Gotcha.
And at that point, I'd never heard of this kind of stuff, so it was like totally. But his interview just floored me that this was going on. So I immediately ordered the book. And ironically, interestingly enough, a year later is when I, became aware that I was being attacked. So, yeah, I would say anywhere between 2011, 2012.
Gotcha.
I have the dates. I've been mapping this whole experience since then.
There you go. That's a great angle.
And I kept an audio journal of what was going on, because I'm not at that time I wasn't typing anything, so I just took the little MP3 recorder and made audio journal files of it.
That's a great idea.
Yeah, and so yeah, it's been about 11 years for me with this.
I think that's great advice for everybody out there that's having trouble with stuff, is always document things and
document
keep track,
everything,
because it'll help even your own sanity, even if it doesn't prove anything to anyone else. It'll help you with your own sanity to see things happening over and over again, and it'll help.
Yes, it helps in a lot of ways, but I use it not only just to keep a record, but it helps me when I need to go back and reference, like, oh, I remember that went on. It's a documentation, and you should do it, guys, and especially if you're on the long-term project, and even if you're on the short term. I mean, I am aware of some newbies, and what they are doing is they're going on YouTube and documenting their experiences that way. Back then we didn't have this, so now with social media, you have individually, you have an opportunity to make your own record and post it. So do that.
That's more or less what I'm doing. Is I'm deciphering myself in real time and in public, because I couldn't bother to be doing this in the shadows. Everyone, write a book, tell your stories. I'll just do it right now. I mean, what am I going to do? Sit in the closet editing and waiting years to figure myself out as I get more complex and can't figure out where I'm at then at that point? So I just opened up and figured I'd start letting everybody know that, folks like me exist. We're out there, and it's unfortunate that kids get treated the way that we got treated, but we'll move on and try to do the best that we can to help children from being treated that way in the future.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. That is the goal.
let's maybe shift gears and go toward that direction.
Sure.
I'm familiar with what it was like in New York as a kid, and it was challenging on the streets. Let's just put it that way, and I'm sure Greg can follow me there.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of folks that have been following along with my story know that when I was in grammar school, I got caught up in what I know now to have been functional CIA programs that were subcontracting through the Monroe Institute to get into the Stargate or Gateway programs and do a lot of the remote viewing and things like that, and similarly some MK Ultra type things. And having spoken with Greg some, we're gonna have a discussion because of potentials, and we're all trying to make connections in our lives, and this should be interesting. And it's going to be Greg's first time talking about it, so we're going to take it slow and steady, and we'll go through the paces.
Okay.
And when you were a child, you had mentioned that I used the term street urchin. I used to call myself a street urchin. But you were
I call hood rats.
hood rats. There you go. So you would have called yourself a hood rat. Fair enough. And in your life as a hood rat, you messed up and had to go somewhere at some point. And this was a boys' school. You said, right?
That was the name, but it was far from a school.
Totally understood. Roger that. This is. I
mean, they had a setting and everything. What I was mentioning is that when we were talking, I as a little kid, you just you're doing the little dirty deeds, not obeying your parents. We were just a little gang of kids. We didn't listen to our families, and we're always out into mischief. Whether we're fighting with other groups or you're just getting into anything, and we were always into trouble. Always. That's just the nature of the gang when you're a kid in the hood, and you're just out getting into trouble just all the time.
Pushing the line to find out where the line is that day.
Yeah. And your role models are also getting into trouble. So, those are you're following the lead. These guys are cool. They're older than you. And look at what they're doing. They're doing it and they're flashing it. I mean, so when you think of the concept of the inner city, or as I call it, hey, this is the ghetto, bro. That's it. And you got those are your role models. And
as soon as you perform your first scam, they pat you on the back for it.
Basically, you're indoctrinated.
Yeah.
And you're glad, you're happy, like, whoa, I made it. It's like I made it into the club. So I came from very devoted Baptist Southern families, and they nipped it in the bud for me. They got a hold of the social workers, and you know how they did it, which is really interesting. They invited the social worker to the house. She came, white lady. I don't know who she was, but she was obviously in an agency, and my grandmother was there. And so we're going for the ride. Just out, and she said, bring your toothbrush and your pajamas. And I didn't think, like, why do I need my pajamas? I said, Mom, are we coming back? She says, yeah, just bring them. So that was the first thing. And I mean, it blows over my head, like I'm going someplace and I'm never coming back. So we're on the train and we're going up from the Bronx to Westchester County, Pleasantville. So it was a little bit of a ride because you have to take the Metro North. I'm not sure if people are familiar with the transportation system here. You got to go to Grand Central, catch the Metro North, and then there's a taxi drive or a car service drive to the place. So we had to go through all that. So I get there, and my grandmother, and it's a big campus, so you're in the suburbs, basically. You're out of the hood and you are in the suburbs. Nice. By the way.
I imagine I'm familiar with the area. I imagine it's gorgeous. Yeah, I imagine it's gorgeous up there.
Pretty.
It's dead in the Catskills.
Yeah, very pretty. And by the way, this is my first I'm a kid, you know, what was I, 12?
Okay, that's what I was just going to ask. So you're 12 years
11,
old.
11, 12, somewhere around there. So I was young. So this is my first time suburbs too, uh,
The
driven.
woods.
Yeah. And so it's like a total, not a shock, but it's a, you know, because there was nothing really to be shocked about, but it was an eye
It was
opener.
it was a brand new experience for you.
Yeah, you know, you're seeing beautiful homes, grass, trees. You know, not that you don't see that, you know, in the Bronx or your travels throughout New York,
Mm-hmm.
but you're now in it, and so
Immersed.
I got to see people, somebody's cutting their lawn and stuff like that. So, you know, I got all those sensations coming at me as I'm going to this facility, and I'm like, where am I going?
Mhm.
So, long story short, they get me there, and we had a group interview. I guess this was the admitting counselor or administrator at
Mhm.
Pleasantville, and she's just asking me a bunch of questions. But then at some point, she asked me to leave, and I had to sit outside the office alone while my grandmother and the social worker that took us there, all three of them talked.
Mhm.
So that was, you know, probably like 5 minutes, maybe a little shorter. Then they opened the door, called me back in, and I'm trying to gauge, you know, at what point did they hit me with the big boom? I
Mhm.
think my grandmother and the social worker was about to leave, and I'm ready to follow them.
Mhm.
And then I looked over to my grandmother, and she had this like such a sad look on her face, like she just betrayed me, you know, like, no, you're not coming home. And I looked at her, and it broke my damn heart. But yeah, I was put into this boy's home then, and beyond to be honest, you know, my home life wasn't the same ever since. It
I
was
understand.
once you're in, yeah, once you're in, you're either gonna go out and you're out completely, or you're gonna go through the system.
Mhm.
And that's
This
what happened to me.
this is shocking to me to hear this because it seems, from my perspective, somewhat transactional.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was like I said, it was initiated probably on the phone with that woman
Mhm.
and my grandmother. You know, I'm not a privy to that, but I just know she showed up to my house,
Mhm.
and whatever conspired behind my back before that, I knew nothing of it. But it was orchestrated. Put it this way: get
I can
him.
follow. Yeah, it seems very orchestrated. It also
Yeah,
seems very expedient to me.
oh, listen, it
It
was
seems
quick.
this seems extremely expedient to
It was
say
quick.
to take a guardian of a child
Yeah.
to almost to say, you know what,
I mean,
I'm
my mom,
mad, I'm done.
my mom, right. My mother was deceased, so my grandmother was
I,
only on
yep,
part.
yep. Your grandmother's your legal guardian, but
Yeah.
even in a way, it seems that place has resources, right? That school for boys is resourced, right? I don't think that your
When
grandmother was
yeah.
paying you to go there.
No, not at all. Absolutely. In fact, when you
If anything, it
imagine,
sounds to me the reverse. That a facility like that is so resourced that did they pay her for you? Is my curiosity.
Eric, it gets interesting when I dug a little deep into this facility, and I'm not going to knock it but it's a massive campus. I mean, massive. They have three types of entities operating within there. And I only found this
Good
out.
choice of words.
Yeah, it's three legal entities going on there. So they have what they call a diagnostic section, and
Mhm.
these for kids that are coming in processed, and they're going to diagnose them and see if they're going to stay there or go elsewhere. And
Diagnose them for what? Because I mean, like in your case, what would the diagnosis be?
I have no
Stubbornness.
idea, but this is the term they used.
I got you. I
They
got you.
called
I got you.
This is the
Okay.
term they used.
Okay.
So they call it diagnostic, and then the second part was the cottage school. The other part was called cottage school. Now these are the kids that are, you can come from diagnostic and go to cottage school, and so you're more like a resident there now. You're living there and you're going to the school that they have there.
Mhm.
And that's more long term.
Mhm.
And then there was the other section, they called it Eden Wall. Why they call it Eden Wall, I don't know. But that
Say
was
this
also
again. What they call it?
Eden Wall, like the Garden of Eden and a
Okay.
wall.
Okay.
They call it Eden Wall. I have no idea where the name term came from, but that's what we were told. But the difference was is those kids were severely mentally handicapped. We're talking severely mentally handicapped with injuries, brain injuries, epilepsy. So,
Mhm.
you would see the van with these kids, and some of them were wearing the helmets and things like that. So you knew, there were, it could be anywhere from a genetic issue or to an injury. I don't know. I was young at that time, but I
Gotcha.
knew the difference.
Mhm.
So you have these three entities on this massive campus. I mean, it's just, it's full of everything, not just buildings. It's just huge.
How many
And it's
how
still,
many children do you think would have been there in a typical day between all three of the programs?
whew, more than thousands.
Ballpark?
Absolutely.
More than what?
More than thousands. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it had to be. There is, I mean, and you got, when you see the administrative side, what they do to try and keep it going. Um, it's a campus. I mean, it's almost, I'm trying to even gauge, like, how big. It's
And
huge.
and budget. I mean, who's
I never
paying for all of this?
That's a great question.
Who's
I
paying for all of
couldn't even tell
this?
you. I had at that time, I have no idea
Right.
where's the money. Because the school had a what could I call it? They were part of the legitimate school. I think it was a union free school, or was a union. I know the community, when it came to the cottage school, some of the normal kids, or I don't want to use that term, normal kids that weren't in
In
the
equal.
in Eden Wall or cottage school, they some of the locals were going to the school there, so it had a good reputation for
Hmm.
to be a good school. At least that was what we were told. But as far as the money, other than social services and things like that, I have no idea where they get it. I know the place that I ended up, there's private funding. So I really don't know where they got it, but
No
it was a lot.
worries. I was just curious if it was something you had come across in your investigations on the place. But now, so you went there. You said it was around 12 years old. How long did you spend there?
Probably a year,
That was
because they moved me on. I mean, it was rough there.
okay.
Um, it was rough. Yeah, I don't think I made it. I made it probably to a year, fighting constantly, even with, you got to defend yourself in these kind of
Well, that's what I'm
places.
getting at. So, yeah, I totally get. So there's this distinction between what you said before of it having a reputation of a
Yeah.
good school, but now you're also telling me that in
Yeah.
addition to it having a good reputation, there was a shadowy side.
Yeah, I mean, just imagine, there's a collection of hood rats. We're all in there, staking our identity. Like, where are we? We're locked up. This is the children's version of getting locked up. You could still run away,
Mhm.
but your parents have taken an initiative to try and stop you from hanging out in the streets and getting into trouble, or possibly killed. Getting involved with something. When you look back, it's a rescue mission on the family side, even though, that was my processing, but it was a little bit different. Um, as
The
far as,
besides the was the facility co-ed or it was just boys' school?
great question. It was, I know there were definitely, it was co-ed as far as, the cottage school. So you
Hmm.
did see, in my situation, I don't remember seeing any. No, it was boys.
Hmm.
It was all boys. Yeah. And they may have had I know there were other, um, how can I call it? Other, it was strange how to process it. I
Wings?
mean, there
Were
were
they like
definitely
different?
girls, but, put it this way, when they put us in that, when I got admitted, I wasn't allowed to go no farther than a tree from where the house or the house facility that they have us living in. You
So then
weren't
there's certainly no
allowed.
female sitting in your classroom with you.
No, not at all. Not at
Okay.
all.
So it was
No,
all
no.
boys classes. How many kids in a class do you think?
Wow, that's a tough one. I got to dig the old
No,
brain.
no worries. Just digging through the memory banks there.
It wasn't, from what I recall, it wasn't, it was sort of like a factory kind of thing. We had a schedule, we had lunch, and it was always on time, and they had the catering, on campus catering, come deliver the lunch and the breakfast, and almost like the hospital, they do in the hospital.
Yeah.
It was,
It seems very much they were treating you like patients than students.
I guess,
It seems that way.
yeah,
And yet, I don't think your grandmother sent you to a place for any medical condition that you had,
no,
or mental even.
And in fact, I think, there was well, I don't think, I'm certain of it. There was a misleading on social services to push this on the parents of, kids like myself that were, listen, we're troubled and we're outside. So, that's, I take responsibility for that. I'm a kid and I was doing that. But their approach was definitely misleading. I mean, it was like a sales pitch to.
Yeah, it's like they were trying to fill a slot for some reason.
Exactly. Like, oh, we have these new programs, and it's designed for this, and this, and we think this will be great for Gregory. That kind of thing, and and the desperate mom, all she wants is, I don't want to see my kid killed on the street.
And not for nothing. In defense of your grandmother at this point, she's a grandmother at this point.
Yeah, she did it out of love. I'm not gonna.
She did the kid thing.
Yeah, I mean, I look back on it and I said, she did what she had to do, because I was definitely in it. And, the longer I stayed in it as a kid, listen, I'm 12. So just imagine what I would be at 15 or 16, still doing this nonsense. I'm graduating into crime, basically. And she had to nip it in the bud.
Yep.
And
she was doing what she thought was right.
Yeah, she did. It hurt like hell, but she nipped it. It sent me on the other path. That's for sure.
So now the initial school, the students were obviously difficult to get along with. What was the faculty like? Were they fair?
Great question. The faculty, you get a mixture, and it's a bad mixture, because there was some that I thought were just absolutely loving and wanted to help, and I relied on them. I trusted them, and there were probably a couple that I could truly say that I had out of the experience there.
Earthquake.
Then there was.
Hold on a second, bro.
Okay. Wow.
Hold on. Yeah, I knew something's coming. We're earthquaking right now.
This is a first.
Yeah, I never had it happen live or on recording. That was a good hit. We're still shaking.
Really? You're still shaking?
Yeah,
wow.
I can feel it in the ground.
Well, thank God I'm not seeing any kind of...
What's up, Naomi? The dog's flipping out. Okay. We're stable.
We're stable?
We're stable.
Whew. It's an interesting feeling, though.
Sure is.
I had it once in the Bronx. There was the Bronx had, probably in 2012, I think 2012, somewhere around there, we had a fault line shake. And I was just watching, I was on my computer, and the building felt like it swayed left and it went back. And I'm like, what the heck was that? And you turn on the news, everyone said they felt it was a rumble in the fault line. So that was my first.
This is a good one.
Wow.
It wakes you up. Okay. So we were before we were so rudely interrupted by Mother Nature. We were discussing that you had said that some of the staff were very nice and loving, but then you were saying that some of the others,
they were inappropriate. I mean, they should have never been counselors. There were some, I mean, that back then, to be just a counselor, meaning at least from my perspective, there were some that just they didn't finish high school, but they were able to interact and monitor children. Some of them, you can see they had their own issues. And
Mhm.
so when, the kids step out of line, they weren't trained to handle it. And some of their actions were aggressive. I've seen kids get punched. I myself, when I had a confrontation with one of them, they put you in what they call the quiet room.
Mhm.
Yeah, and that's basically a padded room,
Mhm.
basically. I mean, if they couldn't control you, if you feel like something was unfair, and you were voicing your opinion,
Mhm.
if it got to a point where they didn't want to hear it, they were the decision makers. If they didn't want to hear you talk, they had the right to put you in there for a few
If
minutes, and
if you weren't using,
just to shut you up. Like, hey, I don't want to hear you talking anymore, and I'm gonna shut you up, and I'm put you in the quiet room for 30 minutes,
Mhm.
because he had to stay there and watch you while you're in that room. So it was depending on how much he was willing to
hang out.
take and wait. Yeah, he couldn't just drop you in there and
Mhm.
walk off and then go have a cup of coffee and come back in an hour. He had to stay there behind the closed door. Um, but that was one of the tactics they used a lot. And it was, kind of fearful. Sure, no one wants to
I
be
could I
locked
could
up.
totally I could totally imagine
Yeah,
the room being not fun, and then the punching. I mean,
yeah, yeah.
I
The
imagine
like
that
like I
you're
said,
you're you're being polite using paralegal terms and saying that they would sometimes be aggressive. But if you
yeah,
were being less polite and you were using hood rat terms and talking to your friends, what would you say that you saw the not nice guards doing to the kids
there were some counselors that will punch you like you're a man. So just imagine that, like you're,
without
someone
pause,
on.
probably?
Yeah, so it's like, they punch you in the head or punch you in the chest, punch you in the arm,
Hmm.
or even sometimes, they would slap you.
Hmm.
I got slapped.
Hmm.
I got slapped.
Hmm.
In fact, I got slapped one time and it bothered me. And back then my father was still alive, and I called him and I said, this counselor hit me. He came up. He definitely came up to say, I heard there was something about one of these counselors hitting my child.
Hmm.
And then that's when the administration got involved. So there was,
And that's when you got transferred.
well, I definitely got it. I was not I was an enemy, basically, because it went from uh, conflict to stay away from me because I don't like you. It made it worse. Put it that way. So
Mhm.
now I'm a threat
Now
to the
he's
job.
targeting you.
Yeah. Basically, I'm a threat to the job. So, and I mean, he wasn't on shift all the time,
Hmm.
but he was one of those. I remember what they call him, Buck. That was his name, fucking Buck. I can't make this up, buddy.
Hmm.
I can't make it up.
Wow.
And yeah. So I remember that, and you find that throughout the system, that these are no more than your cousin probably trying to be a counselor, or
Yeah, not highly credentialed people for the task at hand.
zero, zero,
Mhm.
zero experience. And I hope it's changed. I believe it has. I believe, you have to have some sort of counseling in with children and things like that. I know it's changed, but back
I almost
then,
imagine back in that time period that they would probably just, as long as they didn't have booze on their breath when they came in,
yeah, exactly.
you're qualified.
Hey, listen. Hey, listen. Let me tell you something. I got stories to tell you. Some of these counselors,
Hmm.
yeah, forget it. So, but I made it through. Yeah, I'm gonna
Fair
be
enough.
honest with
Yep. So now, you wound up transferring out of the facility in Pleasantville.
you. Right. They held me there for about a year, and then they placed me into a boys' home called Wolfsburg School for Boys,
Mm-hmm.
and this was in Yorktown Heights, New York.
Okay.
It was all boys.
Mm-hmm.
Wolfsburg School for Boys. It's long term.
Mm-hmm.
You get to go home on the weekends. They sectioned it off by age group, so they had we call them cottages, but they're room dormitories basically. And I'm in my age group, and then you walk up the hill, and they had another section, and that's their age group, and so everybody was put together by age.
Mm-hmm.
And I even think they sectioned us off by borough. So there were kids from the Bronx, kids from Manhattan, and kids from Brooklyn. They paired us up that way as well. So it was by age and by borough.
Did everybody typically go home on the weekends?
Everybody, yes, there was a bus that took everyone to a specific location. So like the Manhattan, if you were going into Manhattan, there was a certain location, like in Harlem, where they dropped you off. Mine, luckily, interesting for mine, I remember they dropped me off about 2 blocks from my home, and that's I can't remember if it was they dropped you off or if they dropped everyone off at a certain location. I have to dig on that, but I know for me, when we got in the Bronx, it wasn't far from my home.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the weekend, and we had to meet back at the same spot. And if you didn't show up, of course they'd call, and it wasn't a prison, but it was a
well-regulated community.
Boys institution. Yeah, boys institution. That's what they called it. They certainly.
I'm really surprised to hear about the weekend departures.
Right, you're a ward of the state, is what it was.
Gotcha. Yes.
Right.
Yes, which is a very important legal term.
Right, you're a ward of the state. That's the legal term of it, and you're in this facility, and they are. I guess the state is paying the facility to care for you as far as medical, food, clothing.
That would make sense now. If you have that title, if you're a ward of the state, then that state is funding that. I agree.
Right. In fact, I remember, what did I hear? They were per kid. I think it was about $50,000 or $60,000 per kid.
Which would also lead me to believe that there are companies at that facility that want to make sure those rooms aren't empty, because then they lose $50,000 per kid.
Right.
I do see potentials for incentivization in conversations here.
Yeah. So
unfortunately,
it's quite interesting when you learn those facts.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's frustrating to hear this stuff, because I question what was really going on there. I mean, I know that you were a child, so you're not privy to everything in the exchanges, but it sure looks to me like there's a lot of room for pay-to-play stuff going on there. And when you got kids involved, it drives me bonkers to consider these things.
No, it's
do you believe that's what was going on? I mean, this is where my brain is going.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. For one, this particular facility was unique. This was started by Eleanor Roosevelt. It was called the Eleanor Roosevelt Wolfsburg School for Boys. This was an initiative. This was it had been around for a long time, but it was started by her.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see. Was it Roy Campanella? A baseball player went through there also. I think it was Roy Campanella, or I have to look that up again. But I know he made a visit there, and he was paraplegic. He must have got injured, so he was in a wheelchair. But I remember there was Claude Brown. There was a guy by the name of Claude Brown. He wrote a book called Man Child in a Promised Land. He went through there also. So these are the things that they were telling us, who sort of like the alumni.
You too can be one of them.
But what I wanted to mention in your point, like the things going on, the one thing I want to say that there were some nice people there that really wanted to help. The social workers, the people that are paid nothing, to have a job and to help. I have to honestly say they were sincere trying to get the kids to help. The institution behind the doors, some of the management, we had everything from embezzlement. I mean, you see, even in the cafeteria, you see, we used to make fun about this as the kids. It's like we caught the chefs stealing the turkey, putting it in the trunk. It's like we made fun. I mean, it was
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
just imagine. We knew what was going on. There was a guy, but I guess he was the president. Well dressed, I think it was a Mercedes. So we're like, yeah, how much is he stealing? And so we made fun of this, of the embezzlement, the crooked, things that were going on.
I think that's great. That's how our psyche works, actually. It's a wonderful coping mechanism to be able to laugh in the face of adversity, no matter what that adversity is. If you can come up with a bigger joke than the bigger problem, you're having a great day.
I mean, you understand, we're from the hood, so we spotted it. We like, look at this guy. I mean, and that's why
that guy brings in the biggest lunchbox to work every day.
Exactly. And I say, you want to help me? And you're trying to. I mean, we don't have that. Back then, we're tough guys. So, and meanwhile, we're in trouble. You're not educating yourself. I mean, you have to check yourself. I mean, I do that now because I'm looking back, but at that moment, I'm just a kid in trouble, and here I am. I'm calling out, a thug, a crook, like, hey, look at him. He's stealing because nothing's getting done here. You got the chef stealing the turkeys. The counselors, back then everyone was smoking pot. The counselors were taking the weed of the kids, because it was a home visit. So you go home for the weekend and the kids are coming back with their little stash. Yeah. And the counselors were checking everyone. And when they found it in your pocket, they confiscated it. Like,
hell yeah.
Where did that go? It didn't go in the toilet, that's for sure.
That's what the cops did in the neighborhood where I grew up from.
The cops did that the same way. They took your stash.
They would take your stash, and we knew where they went, where you could buy it back.
Yeah. That's common in the hood. It's like, even the drug dealers, like, they're not sending you to jail. They're just taking your stuff.
Yeah, then they got a guy that they give it to, and they get a cut from what he does, and he puts it right back on the street again. And then it's just the circle of life.
People have a hard time understanding these little truths that go on in our world, with regards to, how corruption, how far it goes, and
when the police evidence locker has 9 tons of marijuana disappear, and then they put in a note that rats must have ate it. That was a classic.
That is a classic. Must be some stone rat.
Must be some. Yeah. Did they find the Doritos too? Are all the Doritos going down?
Are they heading down to the local pizza shop to? I'm gonna slice with extra cheese and sausage, Joey.
Be on the lookout for a pack of really slow-moving mice. With the munchies.
With the munchies.
Oh man! So now the Wiltwick, having an illustrious history of alumni, you got there. I guess you were about 13 years old.
Yeah, about
going on 14.
Wolfsburg, because I didn't stay long at like I said, Pleasantville. So it was there probably. I was there probably for about 2 or 3 years. I think. Gosh, 2 to 3 years. I know it's definitely past 2, but they were holding me there because I think they were. Well, I think they were planning to put me somewhere else. So they had no intention of letting me go home. Put it like that.
Okay.
I wasn't going home. As much as I was trying to be good and fight, I wanted to go home. The reality was, they wanted to continue me on into the programs. And you're young, so you don't understand. I mean, I'm explaining it now
Mhm.
articulately, but back then, it just came at you. And
Right. Like I'm trying to imagine the perspective of you as a child, right? Obviously, you want to go home. So, like,
it's a lot of
what do you at
disappointment.
that time? What do you imagine the program is as a kid?
I didn't know. I just, to me, it was,
It doesn't seem like they're
you're,
presenting it like school,
I just felt like it was a holding more than anything, because there was nothing moving, nothing.
but education.
I'm bound to a routine to have breakfast, and then there was a classroom setting, and they gave us some, I don't know what to call it. It was like some educational book series that you had to complete, a series of exercises, and then you next level. But then I think there was like 36 levels,
Okay.
and it encompassed reading and writing, and once you get past 36, that was it. There was nothing else. You just sat in the class. And there were a bunch of us like that. We're like, we went through that little series so quickly, and all we did was sat in class and
So it's
told jokes.
basically it's a self-educating book series. It's not like you have an instructor that's leading you
Exactly.
through the lesson at all.
Nope. No,
The
you
hell
sat
is
in a room that looked like a class, but there was no teaching. It's just a book,
They
and
were
you would get
cashing out on you guys. Holy cow!
ridiculous. But then, listen, I mean, not for nothing, we're young, so we were happy that it was like that. But then on the side, there was that inner voice telling me, you're not learning any goddamn thing. You're, you want to get out. And then I also felt a little handicapped in certain instances against others.
Mhm.
And I'm not necessarily saying the other children, but against the adults.
Mhm.
Um, because there was a little micro library in there, and she was very nice.
Mhm.
There was put it this way, it was not the class setting you and I are accustomed to, and so yeah, so that's how it was for 2 to 3 years. Yeah.
Okay. And now, the social environment with the other kids, more aggressive, less aggressive?
Aggressive, very. It was always like that. It
Okay.
was,
That
you
never
got to remember
dissipated.
that this is authority now. You have these age groups, you got everyone wants to be a tough guy, and you had the, what do I call him? He would be the alpha of the campus. And there was one guy, it really was. He beat the crap out of everybody. And he even had the big guys scared of him, which is really nice. And I became friends with him.
Nice. Good job. Good job.
He looked out for me one time against one of the big guys.
Mhm.
And I thought this big guy was tough because, he was taking everybody's stuff. He was taking your clothes, your jewelry. If you bought a brand new pair of sneakers, he would take them from you. I mean, this is what went on when we were in that boys' home. Your property was
It's a
stolen.
might makes right environment.
Yeah, I mean, guys would just come up to you like if you're on the streets, but we're on this campus, go in your pockets, take
Mhm.
your money and whatever you had. And then you would have to either go to the counselor and say, this happened to me. And sometimes you got nothing done by the counselor because he's in on it. He knows that the kid does this and he says nothing. And some of the counselors were scared of the kids.
Mhm.
Yeah, it was, you had that situation. And that was routine.
Just out of curiosity's sake, do you happen to know of the backgrounds of any of the kids? Like I know yourself, it didn't really sound to me like you really did anything terrible in your past to deserve going to this place. But were there other kids that you know of that had maybe more of a darker history?
There were a couple of them. In fact, some of the older ones were the ones that had a little darker history because they were involved with the robberies and maybe a gun possession or a gang kind of thing like that.
So in my mind's eye, like I imagine like you and the other kids there, like that adds to like your standoffish for these folks because it's a big deal, you know.
Yeah.
When you're 14 years old and that dude is big and crushing people and robbing them, and then you add to the mystery, oh, I also heard he shot someone. You know, it's like
Right,
I'm gonna
right,
leave.
right,
I'm gonna leave this
right.
dude alone.
Yeah. I mean, the older guys, when I look back and I try to compare the difference between us and between them and the younger, the younger had more of I mean, I guess everybody had a disturb or family issues and things like that.
Sure.
But the younger kids definitely were being handled like, okay, this is a family issue, something's going on with the mom or the dad or whatever, like the
They were
kid is
learning.
not, yeah, the kids can't be controlled from the home. So they blamed it on, broken family kind of thing.
Mhm.
But then when you got to the older, it was a combination of both. All right, this guy is old. Look at him, he's 6 feet and he's 14, that kind of thing, so they handled them a little differently, and the counselors were a little more tougher too. They put guys that were counselors that were beefed up, and a little bit difficult. They were. I was intimidated by some of those counselors. Even I didn't say hi to them or anything like that. They just looked intimidating, like they didn't want to be talked to.
Mhm.
So that's how I maneuvered,
Mhm.
on that campus. And but like I said, it
They were
was
more like the enforcers.
they were moving me on.
Mhm.
Um
So then
so
now, so for the years there, so how long do you think you were there before you finished that self-educating book series?
in fact, I finished that book pretty quickly. If I had to guess, because I clowned around in there too.
Understood.
Um
I'm sure you weren't sitting there with your nose to the grindstone 8 hours a day. I get that.
I it had to have been months because it wasn't difficult. I mean,
Okay.
just imagine, the book was probably no thicker than that,
Wow.
if you can see the thickness of that. So, just imagine a series of book that you'd have to complete something that thick, and then you go to the next level, and the next level, and the next level.
Okay.
There were
Okay.
36 of those
Okay.
that I remember.
Mhm.
And it wasn't complicated questions, they were like
Right.
fill in the blanks.
Mhm. But then again,
Like,
after months, you now have years of nothing to do educationally.
I would say so.
Okay.
Because all I remember was, telling jokes and laughing. That's what I recall when I
I
wasn't.
can't believe you can't recall having a teacher. You know, the fact that they had all of these kids
Well,
theoretically getting educated away from their families to find out that they're not actually getting educated.
listen, here's a true story.
Huh?
I went home. I'm not sure what happened or something like that. I know I was trying to get into regular school from there. And I'm not sure what prompted me, but I came across a handicap that I didn't know my multiplications by memory.
Mm-hmm.
And remember going home on the weekend. My grandmother was basically like she was a valedictorian in her school in the South.
Okay.
And
So she knew her times tables.
Oh, God, forget it. She was, I mean, my grandmother read like she was, I don't know where that came from. I didn't inherit it. But she had books everywhere. I mean, she was like a bookworm, and I'd see her reading one book in the morning, and I come back in like maybe an hour or 2 hours, and she's on a different one. And I'm like, did you just read that whole book? Yeah. I'm like, okay, I didn't get this. That kind of thing. That's who she was. So one time I'm home on a weekend, and remember, I'm keeping this private because I think I was a little bit embarrassed that I couldn't do my timetables. Meanwhile, I'm a young kid. But I think you should have known them by that point. And I took the initiative myself to get the index cards and practice while I was at home on the weekend. and she caught me and she said, "You don't know your timetables?" I said, "No, Ma." I said, "I don't know them. I can't remember. I don't know them." And so she helped me actually with it, the index cards and stuff like that. But I remember I did it all in a weekend too. I remember the whole thing in less than a weekend. It was, but that was, I wasn't learning that in the school. And if I think that if I had taken an initiative to ask one of the teachers privately to keep a schedule with me, I want to learn, I probably would have gotten it. But, they were nice people and they were just only doing what they were told. So there was no curriculum other than those books and, let the kids go to the gym. There was a recreation, a gym section. So we went to the gym and we did little whatever, played basketball in there. They had a nice pond also where you can go fishing.
Oh, that's awesome.
It's actually a very pretty campus, believe it or not.
I imagine, yeah. I'm very familiar with upstate New York, and people don't really know how gorgeous the communities are there.
It was very pretty. It's just that, it was a boys' institution.
Were you allowed any Liberty Monday through Friday to go in the local community, or did you have to stay?
Not at all.
No, not at all.
No, you do not. The only way you can go into the community was with a campus ride. What the counselors would do is, like, if we wanted to go into town, and we all wanted a sandwich. That was the big thing. Can we go to town and go to the deli and get a sandwich?
Okay,
and that was like the special treat.
What do you think your sandwich of choice was at the time?
Oh, listen, I was a ham and cheese guy. Forget it. Okay. You want a hero?
You got it. Okay.
If you wanted the subs, you wanted the hero with everything. And then you had to have some money too. We're only getting a few bucks in there, so not everybody has the money to get a sandwich. And then, what I recall is that the counselors use that as their weapon. Like, yeah, you want to go off campus? Yeah, act up. You're not going next time. And they used to use that.
Oh, I'm sure it's probably highly effective.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do you have any recollections or beliefs of folks sneaking out off campus?
There were plenty of guys sneaking off There were guys sneaking off campus, going into town. I mean, I remember one guy stole a car actually, and drove into town. There was another guy who actually, they let us go. They took us into town, and we were in some park. And I remember he must have found some girl, and he went AWOL. He went AWOL for probably a week, and we thought it was funny because they're looking for him, and meanwhile he found some woman. She had kids, and I guess she had her own place, so he shacked up for a whole week, and then they found him. He comes back, and he's got hickeys all over him and scratch marks. And I don't know if this was his, all right, yeah, I definitely was laid up with a woman, look at me kind of thing, I'm battered.
The hero of the campus now.
Yeah. And but that's what we saw. And so yeah, there was a lot of things going on. Did he get in a lot of heat for that?
He did, actually. He did. I think he lost a lot of home visits because of it. In fact,
he was one of the big guys. His name was Noah. And he was, put it this way, you see how full grown we are? We called him Big Kid. That's what we called him, Big Kid. He was this muscular 15-year-old.
One of those freakishly strong kid.
Yeah, he was built. You're not taking this guy down. He was muscularly built for his age, but his mentality was a kid. So we all called him Big Kid. And I was just recalling that that's the
did the Wiltwick have a quiet room similar to the Pleasantville facility?
No, not similar, but they had one. Not similar.
Okay.
Wolfsburg ones, I don't think was padded, but it was like a enclosed room and monitored with a nurse on the outside. But they never, I don't recall them using it there a lot.
Okay.
Because you had the counselors. These were
Containment was probably less required at the age.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I'm just
You know, the
imagining
counselor-
that when you had the more enforcer level of counselors available, they just would, I imagine, rectify the problem aggressively at the moment.
At the moment, yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what happened. And so you didn't get the quiet room a lot there.
You would
At least
just
I didn't.
you would get
I know I was.
you would get the smack of the punch.
You get the
instead.
punch, babes, and that was it. And we all pretty much knew who to mess around with and who not to play around with. You know, you had those counselors like, okay, this counselor's on this shift. Like we had, there were ladies, elder, like grandma worked there late at night. She would take a shift, and I say grandmother's unit, meaning an elderly woman. I recall.
You kids are calling her grandma.
Yeah, we called her. I mean, we treated.
Yeah.
I never disrespected her at all.
Right.
She would come probably at midnight, and maybe she'll have a shift that lasts all the way till 6 a.m. You know, so while we're sleeping, she's just at a desk. So you had someone like her there. So they had a interesting
Rotation.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So if grandma was on shift, it's going to be a calm night for you as far as the faculty is concerned.
Right.
Was there a buck type person at the Wiltwick that was like Pleasantville?
Yes, but no one. There was one guy. But he was respected. Believe it or not.
Okay.
Now and here it is. He wasn't. It wasn't anybody intimidating except that he didn't smile. He was a white guy, and I just remember him. We all were told that he was a black belt. That's what we were all taught. Like he was a black belt. And what I did notice is that some of the tougher, older guys, like the real thugged out ones, never went across him. So the rumor of the black belt probably was true.
He probably tuned someone up, and someone saw it at some point.
Right. I heard he did straighten someone out. One of the big guys. That was definitely so. He was definitely feared. No doubt. I mean, it wasn't like he walked around like an angry person or anything like that. He just had this flat-faced.
He commanded respect.
Yeah, he was very, I mean, it could almost be like, that was a sergeant, very firm and straight, and that was it. So as far as like, some buck kind of guy, in some sort of way they all were, but they weren't abusive. They were, these are guys, listen, we pushed the limit, you got to understand that, at that level, the kids will push the limit. They'll test you. And if they can get away with, they'll walk all over you for sure. So there had to be some sort of line drawn on how far, you're going to let these kids go before you have to really slap them back, because there are other kids and then there are activities going on there, just for the counselors as well as for the kids. So it was a little mayhem.
Do you think that most of the faculty, were they living on property, or were they just living in the local community?
Let's see. I heard of one counselor that there was maybe an apartment that he lived in on the campus, and there were almost many of them lived in nearby towns. Pretty much all
off campus.
Yeah, off campus.
10-4.
Yeah.
I was just trying to figure in the like the size and function of the facility, if it was also housing all of the staff and everything as well.
Right.
Would have struck me as a little bit odd too if those folks never left either. As far as the facilities themselves, were they similar? Wiltwyck and the Pleasantville facility?
Great question. No, Wolfsburg was smaller.
Okay,
Wolfsburg was smaller.
interesting. And
Pleasantville was much bigger, like
okay,
almost.
how
4
many
times.
people do you think were in attendance at the Wiltwyck when you were there?
Well, if I can gauge it, let me see. You know, I have to ask. Well, you figure about 20 kids per 20 to 40 kids per borough. I'm gauging because the way the cottage was laid out, you know, just imagine, you know, a railroad type of setting, dormitory rooms built inside. And if I recall, you know, we were all roomed, so you can have 3 kids to 1 room, and then sometimes there were 2. No one had a single room. There was no single room. So, you know, it could be well over 300, 400, 500 kids, somewhere between there.
I find it peculiar that it's evenly distributed between the boroughs.
Yeah, that was definitely the way.
Seems like massive intention going on there right now. That it's not really about, you know, it's not really about helping the kids. It's about taking a budget. It's about taking a budget and evenly distributing it so nobody can complain that we're not helping enough kids in an area. And by definition of helping kids seems very questionable at this point.
Well, that's exactly. I mean, there was zero help. You're not helping these kids. There was no help.
It was a roof and 3 meals.
It was a freaking containment.
Yeah.
And an exaggeration. You know, when I look back on it, you know, there are some kids that I still talk with today. They're doing fine. We're, you know, working and things like that. But then there are some kids I have no idea what happened to them. And you just know they were on a bad path then. And so you question whether or not they're still alive. But there was no help. And I just narrowed it down that we were guinea pigs for a lot of different things. And if you managed to come across, if you're a social worker or if there was a counselor or someone that really, you know, wanted to take you into her care, like I was fortunate. I came across a couple of teachers that wanted to adopt me. One of the teachers that I kind of secretly was in love with, but you know, you're a kid, you know, I just had an infatuation towards her, but she played with me a little bit. So I'll adopt you, but you cannot be talking to me like this, Gregory, and that, you know, kind of thing. And I wasn't being dirty or anything. I just showed that I was infatuated by her. And so she always, you know, she came to work very nice looking and you know, as a kid.
She caught your eye.
No, listen, she and everyone else was looking at her too. It wasn't just me. It was even some of the male counselors were looking at her. You know, she was a beautiful looking woman. But she had mentioned, you know, she inquired about adopting me. But you know, of course that wasn't happening. But those were nice people. You did have nice people there that genuinely wanted to help, you know. So, and I acknowledged them. You know, despite the structure, you know, the mayhem and the corruption. And you're going to get that, you know, there's always a rabbi in the midst to help you, you know, in these kind of situations, you know. Not everybody connects, but you know, they're there.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. There's always a ray of sunshine breaking through the shadows.
Absolutely.
In some capacity if you look for it.
Right. So
I'm glad to hear that you had that going on, at least, you know, that there was still the rays of sunlight cracking through there.
Yeah. And I feel fortunate, you know, that I did. In fact, my social worker was one of them. She beautiful woman, and we're still in touch now. She lives in Chappaqua. Family, beautiful person, and just, you know, these kind of people give from their heart unconditionally. And you know, the paycheck, it's not doing anything for you, but you know, that's what they want to do. They want to help. And I call her the light bringer. I said, you know, you're not getting paid a dime, and she's fine. She's doing fine. And but
her career choice on helping. When you look at these social workers, you have to, you know, I say, listen, I know you're not doing this for the money. But then, there are others, nefarious folks out there in the profession. But for the most part, the profession is populated with people that generally want to help. It's the challenge of getting it done and the resources that's available to them that makes the difference.
Okay. I want to ask a question, though, and I don't want to be discounting to the good people in the programs. Okay? I don't want to be discounting to the good ones. But in your experience, because you had mentioned that, you're like, hey, there's a possibility that, you could, as a kid, get involved with it, like some sort of a program with your social worker, that there was those potentials. So now I get that there are good people out there that exist that are looking out for the benefit of the children in these circles. But one of my fears is that these types of environments are also ripe for the plucking for nefarious people that know where children are at.
Absolutely. And like I said, you and I were discussing this, and I came across a situation where there was one of the kids was going to regular public school on the outside. So he had a bus pick him up and take him to, the Yorktown High School. So he was going there. And
that's very out of the ordinary for the rest of the program that you're in.
This is what's happening. He got a chance to go to Yorktown High School.
Okay.
And I guess you could say I was jealous. Sure.
I would imagine you would have thoughts cross your mind like that. Yeah. He sees different people every day. It's something different.
Yeah. And he was from the Bronx also. So he was from my neighborhood in the Bronx, ironically. And we were close. So I was a little jealous, and I wanted to go, and I got turned down. But at one point, like I said, there was the stranger came on campus, and she wanted to interview me. This came through the school. I had no idea who she was, her name. I don't even remember. I mean, I vaguely remember what she looks like, but the thing that caught me was she was giving me they were more psychological profile tests. Like, she was asking me a bunch of questions and showing pictures and asking me to give her my opinion on what I'm seeing. And I was trying to understand, at least the opinion about it was that they were doing something to get me to go to school. Something. I was going somewhere, and this woman out of nowhere came, and they're evaluating me. And all I can remember was, as the process was going along in the interview, I guess there was some level of excitement and curiosity. Like, okay, it's something school related. I know that because it happened at the school. And since I was on this quest to go to school off campus, I'm thinking, okay, they're getting something going for me. All I can remember was, after a series of questions, she showed me one particular picture, and she asked for my opinion, and I gave her my opinion, and then she sort of like took a double take on it. She says, "You can't see that, or do you understand that?" And I answered her back, but what I got out from it was that, she was double taking, like, wait a minute, you can't see that, blah blah blah, and then it ended with, okay, that's all. And I kind of left feeling like, well, did I fail or something like that? Or, that kind of thing. But
it makes me wonder if they presented their position on the front end.
Right. But like I told you, what I took away from that was, years later, as I think about it now, I think it probably was a blessing that it happened to me, because I think that she was part of some kind of recruitment program. She was definitely not part of the system at all. She had this sternness. It was almost like I'm talking to Sergeant. Honestly, it was, and it just looked like
we're recruiting you for something special, that kind of thing, or we want you for
Checking you out.
checking you out. And when I, like I said, when I, older and you're reviewing it, and I said, I'm almost certain that was some kind of kid mess with your mind. Even, who knows, it could have even been pedophile, I don't even know, but it definitely wasn't anything that looked legitimate to me. And I'm thinking, the karma was in the cards for me to keep me there. So it didn't happen. As far as some of the other kids, me hearing anything, there was one kid, I don't know, he got arrested. He got arrested, and apparently he went to jail. This was the rumor. There's no verification on any of this. Now, just imagine, I hear this story. They say he was arrested and he was doing time in jail, Rikers, from what I understand. But when the kid came, now apparently he was released from Rikers back into the custody of the boys institution. I'm not buying that. And you know what? The guy was traumatized. The guy was traumatized. It was almost like, you ever see that movie, One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, with Jack Nicholson, how they like lobotomized the guy? I mean, he was walking around campus like that. And this was a guy who we played ball with, we laughed and joked with, rode bikes, yell and scream. When he came back, he was like a vegetable. And he was like a vegetable.
Wow.
He was literally like a vegetable. His walk was slow. He was traumatized.
So correct me if I'm wrong. You were being told by other people what happened to him, and he couldn't even communicate it to you?
Well, everything, like I said, I can't say that, it was all official, but,
I got you. You weren't hearing the story from him.
No.
He wasn't even able to tell you where he was.
He couldn't tell us anything because he wasn't talking anymore.
Got you. That's what I'm getting at. So you're getting a story of what happened to him secondhand. You're not hearing it firsthand from him. You're hearing rumors from other people that's obviously not official. But yeah, I find it highly questionable to say that dude disappeared from your campus, got himself arrested, and sent to Rikers, and then returned to your facility?
Yeah. Something happened to him.
I know people I know guys that have been to Rikers. I know guys that are COs at Rikers. It's like, come on, that's not how it works.
Yeah, and all we could think was, we're kids. We got, I'm trying to, make sure the audience understand that, we're still kids. So our mindset is not where I am explaining it to you now. So we had other thoughts going like, oh, they raped him in jail, that kind of thing, because he was not the same person. And so I remember as a kid just looking at him like, damn, man, what did they do to you, man? Did they, my thoughts were, you hearing that he's raped? I'm like, wow, did they rape you that bad? And, that kind of thing. I mean, those were the thoughts.
Yeah, like you were believing he went to jail. You had no reason to disbelieve that.
Greg Moore, 2021, that was not jail. That was not jail. What they did to him, I don't know. But they totally, the guy was not the same. He was broken.
And he was a minor?
He was probably our age, but just a little taller and slimmer.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Age-wise, he was under 18.
Yeah.
Right? He was under 18 years old, guaranteed, if he was in that facility, right?
Oh, he was definitely under 18, for sure.
That's what I'm getting at. He's under 18 years old, so how do you get into Rikers? That doesn't make any sense. Come on. Yeah.
Yeah. That's
unfortunate.
So this is what was going on, and I remember all of us having this sense of sadness for him because he was a cool guy. He wasn't a troublemaker. I mean, like, someone that, would bully you or anything like that. That's
what I was just getting. So now knowing of what you know of this kid, I was going to say gentleman, kid, knowing of this kid.
They were all kids. There's no
right. Lest we forget, we're talking about children to the audience. Remember, everyone, we're talking about what they do your friend, this kid, didn't have a history of doing the bad things, so it seems that it would have been out of character for him to all of a sudden have shown up on an arrest list.
Yeah, you know what? In fact, when I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we heard as kids that, hey, he got arrested and he did this, and and I know it was a surprise to all of us, because it was almost like, that's not his personality.
Do you have a recollection of what they said he did?
I don't.
Okay, no problem. No problem.
If I can recall, I thought it was some kind of robbery or something like that.
Okay. I think you might have said that earlier too. Actually, I forgot.
Yeah, the detail and things like that, I don't recall, but I distinctly remember a robbery, and he was arrested.
Okay, but even the robbery, you were saying, would be out of character for what you knew of him up until that point.
Yeah. I mean,
totally out of character.
I mean, he's not. I mean, not that I'm, saying like your physique is not threatening or anything like that, but he wasn't like, a threatening looking built person.
Right.
He was just slender guy, and
some people you see walking down the street and they're coming at you. You go to the other side of the road just based off of what they look like. He wasn't one of those guys.
He wasn't, and he wasn't. Like it was almost like saying, okay, what tipped you on the edge to try and get a gun and thinking you could rob someone, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when you heard the story about him having that kind of trouble, we all scratched our head on that, saying, really? Wow. I even think we kind of like, really, he got the nerve to do something like that. There are people you could probably expect that would, you could expect that kind of activity from.
Yeah, there's probably six other people. There's probably six other people at the facility that you wouldn't have been surprised at all to get that news about.
Right.
Yeah,
but him, like, no way. It's like a no way. And I think, even if I can recall, I think even from the administrative side that they were a little surprised about it also for him. But I could tell you though, when he came back and months later, and I'm trying to gauge how long. I would think it was definitely less than 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure, he probably did 90 days or something like that, or I just know he showed up and he was broken. Mentally broken. You said hi to him, he looked.
Okay. So, no signs of any physical damage, repair.
Well, you know what? I mean, put it this way: when he's turned up, he just looked like somebody beat the. I mean, I'm not physically, I didn't see any wounds.
I got you, but the expression of a post beating.
Yeah, the mental trauma was there. The eyes, and there were some parts of us, I think we even thought, is he putting us on with an act or something like that? And it wasn't. I mean, he was literally gone. He was gone. He wasn't.
How long do you think you were in his proximity? Like how many years did you then stay with him about you?
You mean after he came back? Or
yes,
before?
After he came back.
I can't say, because him being back, just he became a fixture that way. Mm-hmm. So he was being more monitored. Mm-hmm. I don't even think he was in the same cottage anymore. I think he became like they monitored him.
Like he was in a whole new program.
Yeah, he's like a whole new program within a program kind of thing,
Yeah.
And I think we just all accepted it. And then, I had my thing. So I was moving out of there too. So I don't recall whether or not I left, he's still there, or he left and I was still there. So I can't recall that. In fact,
so now what brings you to completion at the Wiltwyck? What, you just turned 18 years old and they give you a jacket and a bus ticket?
No. Completion at Wolfsburg was
like, what's the guideline? Like, what are they looking for? What's the target? Like, hey kid, you got to stay here till,
I honestly,
like when you go to high school, you're graduating your senior year.
at some point, you're like, hey, you're at this age, you have to have these kind of activities going in your life. One being school from the
Yeah.
morning till a certain point in the afternoon.
In most places, when you arrive, they let you know you're starting something, and they let you know when it ends. But it doesn't seem like the Wiltwick really was anything more than a holding containment place for indefinite containment. But it also doesn't seem like they were enlightening you to what it takes to get out.
No, not at all. You had to be the one. If you had to be the one to be assertive, to not go on default from that program, because it was they hold you, they're getting money from you, and they're going to either put you back where you were before, or something else. And I was fortunate enough at that time, after the experiences of going through it all, and seeing the outside, and I said, hey, I want to get my life together. I don't want to mess up and not go to school. So I had all those things going on with me inside, saying, I am not going down that road. No way. I'm sorry, Ma, that kind of thing. And I'm going to do right. And luckily the social worker, I would reiterate those desires. She would try to help me. So, I'm lucky that I had someone on my side, really, because I could have gone down I could have gone back home, and, that was it, and unfortunately home was not right, because I was too old. My grandmother couldn't support me, at that age, what are you going to do? She can't afford you, really. And you're either going to get a job, avoid your education, or you're really going to have to stay into the system where you can get an education and, be, and not have a strain on her, because she was elderly at that point. And I recognized that, at that later year, I wanted to go home, but I said, home is not right, because the situation wasn't not unhealthy or anything like that, but it wasn't right. She just was not able to care for me. I'm older, and that's the way I looked at it. And so staying in the system was probably the only best choice I had for the future. At least that's what I looked at. I was looking at school. That's where my mind was, school and getting back on track. And I didn't picture myself going to high school in the Bronx. Now, and that was another issue. I missed those grade years. So, as I aged, so I missed a lot of those grade school years. And so when I jumped back in, I went in from where my age was appropriate.
Jeez, that makes it get challenging when you got out, right? So now, when you got out, were you just basically 18 years old? Like, what was the?
No, what happened was that it was a group home. I guess it was a privilege to be offered to stay in the group home. And there were 8 of us, and then there was a couple, and we regarded them as the house parents. And they were nice couple. We still talk. So we were like their kids, even though we're high school. And they were the house parents, and we lived in a house on Cedar Lane in Ossining, overlooking the Hudson. We had a house overlooking. Yeah, people can be pretty pissed off. Like, wait a minute, look how these kids are living. Hudson River view on your back porch, and you're living in the suburbs. I mean, it's a beautiful location. I went to Ossining High School. Yeah.
Cool.
And that's where I graduated. Where I graduated. Yeah.
Awesome.
Kind of interesting, though.
All's well that ends well, and it's good to hear the tale of your experience going in that direction, because I think fast forwarding to where you are in life today, It gives you
Interesting.
insight. It gives you insight that a lot of people don't have. You currently have the Cyber Civil Rights Act amendment that you are working on, and
Yes.
you, as an adult now, have an understanding from being involved with the TI community
Yes.
that there are programs.
Yes.
There are programs
I do.
now that we need to be concerned about, and there are programs back then that we need to be concerned about, right?
Yeah, I got that. I go, wow, here it is. I've been Mr. Programs pretty much from my youth into my adulthood, and I find it interesting. It's at least this TI part is pretty interesting. Not only painful, but it's just, you know, I'm not immune. I'm aware of my surroundings, and I reflect and I look back and I say, because it's all part of the life scheme.
Mhm.
So I look at that and I see what, I put it this way. I know there was a lot of bad things, a lot, but I survived it. I
Right.
survived it, and some of them I dodged. Some of the really bad things I dodged. And I'm grateful for that. And some kids didn't. I didn't get, whatever program did that to him, that, I mean, it almost looked like they just wired his mind because he was gone. I didn't get that, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, and
But
it's
there are many.
unfortunate because it's like you said earlier, when you were there in your first person child perspective, you weren't privy to things that you know now. But now it's like we do know that there were programs, we do know there were technologies, we do know there were government agencies that were working with children. So now, how do we ignore what you know now versus what you saw then?
Right.
And the
Yeah.
potentials are at least worthy of questioning, because we're
Yes.
now learning of all these people that are contemporarily waking up to the fact that they've had traumas applied by some program, by some definition. And we're all trying to learn from our past and experiences exactly what these programs are up to and
Right,
exactly what words we should use. I mean, maybe the program that you were around is similar to the one that I was in. Maybe it isn't, but we're
Right.
not going to
Right.
know until we start communicating and getting the details and the adjectives and the timetables and the hubs of information. I'm really happy that you reached out, because this is I think it's it's like crossing the aisles, from the TI community into like the SSP community, that there could be common vernacular.
And I told you, I definitely saw the connection, because there's a recruitment. They got their tentacles in all of this, in
Mhm.
every community. So, they're going after kids. They know how to get into these crevices
Right.
and get the meat they're looking for
Mhm.
this nonsense that they're propagating for years and years and years. And I came close to it, and I, in my prayers, I say, thank you, God, because I know they were there. I know there. I mean, put it this way: Eleanor Roosevelt, Wolfsburg School. I mean, we got a brand going here, There,
Mhm.
and just the things that, and then there are the other things that I wasn't privy to that you saw on there. I said, I
Mhm.
know they were plucking from there. I
That's what I
know.
want to get at. That's where my brain was going right now. Is that I appreciate that your child's mind shouldn't be responsible for not catching what was going on. So I don't want to. I don't want to be. I don't want to be challenging to your
Right, I feel
child
like,
part in you. But as an adult, I imagine that where your psyche is right now, you can look back into that environment with what you know now, and you can see
Oh,
the danger zones that were existing for these
Totally.
children. Is that accurate to say?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And you're, listen, you're a kid. You're naive to this, but then you're looking back and you're like, wow, man, this is a hotbed. This was like their farm.
Hmm.
You know?
Knowing, no, I'm gonna speculate. I want to speculate here because this stuff concerns me, and you're a person that was there. I can ask the question, right?
Go for it.
Does it seem beyond possible to think that in these environments, the faculty that you were witnessing, do you think it would be impossible for a pedophile to show up to that campus with some cash?
Absolutely.
Find
not.
someone.
Are you kidding?
I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we had them there.
Okay.
We know. Listen, there were
Okay.
rumors.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And listen, and there were, I'm not, knocking, the gender thing, but there were homosexual kids there.
Hmm.
There were a couple of them.
Hmm.
And there were closeness, I mean, listen, the rumors go, and then put it that way.
Fair enough. Yep. Yeah. So now what you probably heard is
it's-
rumors and stuff as a kid that would be almost like scary stories. Now as an adult, you realize the practical reality of what was going on around you.
In fact, there were some rumors that some of the counselors like boys.
Mhm.
You had those, and you got to remember, this is let me see, this is in the late 70s.
It was a crazy time in the world in actuality. People don't realize that.
You get that rumor now, and you got a SWAT team on you.
Mhm.
Back then, you didn't get that.
No.
In fact, if I said a word to a counselor, it'd probably be, I would probably get attacked because they're like, "Oh, you're condemning someone, and this is not true." That kind of thing. That's the kind of social services back then was not what it is right now.
No.
Absolutely.
And it's nothing special. And there's nothing special right now.
Nothing special right now. They still still the same damn organization. So just imagine, 1970s, African American kid coming from the hood, going into these. They're putting them into these programs, into these institutions that are way up in an unidentifiable, a non-relatable environment. I mean, I'm not knocking the suburbs, but listen, your house, you can probably have Santa come down a chimney. Santa does not come down a chimney in the hood. So it's a
I think there's actually a Christmas song called that.
Yeah. And listen, you make fun of those things, but that is the landscape difference. And that's it. So yeah. So I dodged the bullet, so to speak, as far as being scarred and things like that, and being hurt. I had other things I had to fight to get the hell out of there. That was my fight, because I'm young. I got no rights, number one. So it's like the old days where they signed you into a mental institution, that
Absolutely.
kind of thing. And my rights were gone. I'm here and
Word of the state.
get the hell out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Word of the state. Exactly.
Your property.
And yeah, I'm property.
Yes, that's the way the state would look at you on the record books.
Maybe that's why they're attacking me now. They're like, maybe they want their money back.
I wonder how that works in a way. Like, do you get emancipated from the state at some point legally?
I have.
When did you become not a ward of the
that
state?
I know. Actually, I do know that answer.
Okay, like I'm just checking. Like,
yeah, that I know that answer. In fact, when I graduated from high school,
okay,
and when I left the group home, that was officially my ending of being a ward of the state of New York.
Okay,
my graduation, my high school graduation, and when I went off to college, when I left that house, that was it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Became a full-blooded American citizen again.
Yeah. I got no health benefits or anything like that. You're on your own. I even think I inquired about Social Security, because the house parents were letting us know that, you're on your own now. And, although you were living in this setting, your food, clothing, and shelter and everything was provided for you, transportation. I even think they gave us a little bit of allowance, nothing big or anything like that. But all of that is gone. And so she was trying to make sure we were okay with that, and that, we were going to be fine. And I just, it didn't bother me one bit. I was just excited that I got accepted to college and I was out of there. Not out of there as in a negative way, because it was, it was all sort of like a little micro family there.
It was like you're on to bigger and better things.
Yeah, just moving on, and this was a big milestone in my life, from, going from Pleasantville
Well, there was one before Pleasantville, but it was in the Bronx. You know, so here it is on Pleasantville, Wolfsburg, and the group home, and now I'm going to college.
Mhm.
And so that was a big milestone for me.
Absolutely.
Because
Yeah,
it was like,
pulled it
man, you
off.
know, you climbed out of the damn pit and you made it happen, you know.
Mhm.
And in that process, I became a professional golf caddy.
Nice.
From my while I when I went to that group home,
Mhm.
I managed to. There was a guy on my that rode the bus with me, and you know, I'm looking for work, you know, like after school. That's what I was. I was a little hustler. Always wanted to keep a little dollar in my pocket,
Same
you know,
here.
no matter what. And he said, "Hey, man, I'm making $30 after school, and I'm, you know, you're rich, basically, you know, after school because you got no bills, you know." And luckily, his golf course wasn't as affluent as the one that I got connected with. One of the tutors
Mhm.
that came to the house to help us, her neighbor was a member of this country club called Sleepy Hollow Country Club in Tarrytown. So this is a private country club.
Mhm.
And I told her, I said, listen, I want a job. And she said, oh, I could talk to Mr. Galiff. And I got the phone call. So it's like, hey, they want you to go up there. It was probably March or April, probably March, late March. Golf season just coming in. I knew nothing about that then. I met with the caddy master. That's what they called them. He gave you a bag, and I was thinking it was going to be a classroom setting or something like that to teach us. He made us put it on the bag, and he took us for a walk. He took us on a golf green, and he gave us everything we were supposed to do in that one setting. And then he said, he says, I understand you're going to make mistakes. He says, that's normal. But he says, too many, I can't use you. So there it was. And he says, welcome to the club, you're hired. and then I'm leaving like, okay, we just got a job. There's, you know, a handful of kids. It was probably no more than less than 10 of us, probably even 7, you know. But I left with pressure, you know, like I knew nothing about golf. He just gave us probably an hour or less presentation on what we should do. And I got to recall all of this, but at the same time, I'm like, I got a job, you know, and that's how I got that job, and I became a golf caddy, and I was doing
in an affluent country club.
and listen, you can't get any more affluent than
I
Sleepy.
I believe
mean,
you. Some of
you
these
know,
clubs are off the wall.
this club is off the wall,
Mhm.
and I got a
It's
scholarship.
probably got Fort Knox underneath it, I'll bet, too. Probably has a water tower. It's probably got all the amenities that if anything goes wrong, all the rich people go there and they hold up at the Sleepy Hollow.
It's a beautiful country club,
Mhm.
and the members were real nice. I got a scholarship from them. I got a Westchester Golf Association caddy scholarship for
Oh,
school.
man.
They gave me money and the members were the ones who voted on my behalf, because every country club donates to this golf caddy fund. And so from Sleepy Hollows, the members, of course I had a need and
I
everything.
feel like the Sleepy Hollow program might be the retirement program for the Wiltwick program. You're like, oh, you don't get paid. Well, you kind of do, because you don't get paid, but you're going to get paid. Sorry, kid, but, you know, you get a college education out of it.
Right. So that was...
You stepped in it, and then you stepped in it.
I did.
Straight up.
I did. I mean, but you know, like I said, this was, you know, from the time that I left home, it was a fight to get back.
Mhm.
And then as you age, you know, the direction moves towards, you know, bettering your life. So, okay, I have to do something. Okay, I can't, you know, I don't have any skills. I need to go to school. And then you learn about higher education. Then you learn about college. And so, you know, all those shifts, I was still pursuing getting out of there and getting my life back. So that was, so the group home was the graduation basically into reality, because I was out of the system by then. And once I went into college, you're on your own. Even from a home perspective, it was good and challenging. But with regards to, these nefarious programs that scouting kids, they were all in it.
I believe it. I'm intrigued now. I'm intrigued now to actually find out that your next step was to the country club.
Yeah,
this is actually fascinating to me, because I've done a lot of country club work, and they're yes.
Yeah.
I have a lot of questions and thoughts on that, actually. But now that I'm looking at it, it is on the later side of the interview. So what I think we should probably do is let's wrap up this fantastic conversation for today, Greg. And then what we'll do is maybe next time we will start up with Greg's Caddyshack adventures and see where it goes in that direction, because I'm gonna have some questions about that facility for you.
It's a good one. You'll like it, man. You'll like it.
Yeah, I've done a lot of country club work, and they're very peculiar facilities for sure, top to bottom, front to back. A lot of money invested in them for a reason.
Huge amount of money. I mean, I got, just imagine, I'm a kid from the Bronx, and then I'm sort of graduating. I'm living Westchester lifestyle, now that I've, morphed from
now that you graduated from being a hood rat, and now you're somehow living like a Clinton.
I'm a Clinton now, basically, and I'm not kidding you. I mean, it was the offset towards me, even towards like some family members. Like, I would go home and, they notice. I mean, you grow through it, so I went from, 11, 12 all the way to 18 now through this. So I'm inbred now.
You learn a lot when you're a caddy for a Council on Foreign Relations member.
Yes.
Oh, geez. Well, everybody, I want to thank everybody that came by today to listen to this conversation. Please, I will put a link down below for the Cyber Civil Rights Act Amendment, which is Greg's new YouTube page. So check that out, and the work that he is trying to do to reform the world around us to prevent targeted individuals from being attacked by new technologies. So it's a conversation that we should all address and get involved in, because it is the way of the world now. And as we're learning from folks like Greg, who have a history, myself, who have a history, and many other people who are out there, these programs are not new. We just need to learn how to find them, root them out, because the children of humanity have a common enemy. Let's find them.
That's right. And Eric, thank you so much for having me on this channel and addressing this issue, and together, networking and discussing. We're gonna beat this. We're not gonna sit idle. That's for sure.
No, not at all.
And I want to thank you and your audience and your channel for taking a stand. And I'm supporting it wholeheartedly, for taking a stand, and we'll get the job done. Put it that way.
I agree, Greg. Absolutely.
Rome wasn't built in a day, and it didn't go down in a day either.
That's true too. Yep. And I got the stamina for this. I know you do too. And many hands makes light work, folks. So help us out. Like the pages, subscribe, share the content. Please go to deciphering.tv and subscribe as well. That way they can't make us disappear. So thank you, everybody, for coming today. Thank you, Greg. And I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Likewise. Thank you, Eric.
You're welcome.